History often feels like a grand tapestry woven with threads of power, money, and cunning. But sometimes, just sometimes, a different thread appears, a shimmer of something else, something beyond the usual understanding of events. For centuries, one family dominated Florence, building an empire not just of banks and art, but of whispers and legends. They were the Medici, and their story is not just about human ambition. It is also about the uncanny, the unexplained, the chilling moments when the future seemed to bleed into the present. Did destiny truly knock on their doors? Did unseen forces whisper warnings or promises? People believed it, from the humblest street vendor to the most powerful cardinal. From strange celestial events to cryptic pronouncements, the Medici family often found themselves standing on the precipice of fate, guided or warned by signs that defy simple logic. These are not just tales. They are accounts from the very chroniclers who walked the same cobblestone streets, breathed the same air, and sometimes saw the same impossible things. Get ready to dive into the 6 most unsettling prophecies and omens that shadowed the rise and fall of the legendary Medici. Number 1. The cracked bell of Palazzo Vecchio and the final Medici. The grand bells of Florence had rung for centuries, calling citizens to arms, announcing births, celebrating victories. Their voices were the sound of the Republic, then the sound of the Duchy, and always the sound of the Medici. But in the early 1730s, as Giangaston de' Medici, the last Grand Duke of the main line, slowly withered away in his opulent chambers, a different kind of sound began to echo through the city. It was not the crisp, triumphant peal of the bell of the Palazzo Vecchio known as La Vaca, or the cow, for its deep, resonant tone. Instead, it was a dull, clanging thud, a discordant note that sent shivers down the spines of the Florentines. The massive bronze bell, a sentinel overlooking the Piazza della Signoria for generations, had developed a severe crack. It was not a small fissure that could be ignored. It was a gaping wound that rendered its voice broken, its purpose diminished. The bellmakers, experts in their craft, tried to repair it, patching the metal, hoping to restore its former glory, but every attempt failed. The crack persisted, widening, and the bell's sound remained mournful, a hollow echo of its past. This was not just a structural fault to the people of Florence. This was an omen. The Medici family had ruled Florence for over 300 years, their power intertwined with the very stones of the city. The Palazzo Vecchio was their seat of government, their symbol of authority. The bell, La Vaca, was its voice, a constant presence in the daily lives of every citizen. For such a vital instrument to break, to lose its voice precisely as the last male Medici heir lingered on his deathbed, was seen by many as a clear sign from the heavens. It was a lament for a dynasty, a premonition of an ending that would shake the very foundations of the city. The Florentines had long been accustomed to the pomp and circumstance of the Medici. They had seen the family rise from humble bankers to rulers, patrons of the arts, and even popes. They had endured their tyrannies and celebrated their glories. But now, with Giangaston's failing health, a deep unease settled over the city. There was no direct heir, no male Medici to continue the line. The treaties signed by the European powers would pass Florence into the hands of a foreign dynasty, the House of Lorraine, after Giangaston's death. This was a bitter pill for many who, despite their grievances with the Medici, still saw them as quintessentially Florentine. As the days turned into weeks and Giangaston's condition worsened, the cracked bell became a daily reminder of the impending change. Its broken sound seemed to mourn the passing of an era, a lament for the Grand Duke, and, more profoundly, for the end of Medici rule. The chroniclers of the time, observing the mood of the city, noted the widespread belief that the bell's fracture was no mere accident. Giovanni Targioni Tozzetti, a celebrated Tuscan naturalist and physician who lived through these very years, described the atmosphere of foreboding and the various superstitions that took hold of the populace. He recorded the profound despair that gripped many citizens at the thought of losing their long-established ruling family, despite their complicated feelings toward them. The broken bell symbolized this loss, a tangible manifestation of a future where Florence would no longer be a Medici domain. The Grand Duke himself, a melancholic and often reclusive figure, was perhaps unaware of the deep symbolism that the city ascribed to the bell. Yet, his very existence, frail and fading, was a mirror to its broken state. He was the last note of a long, magnificent, and often dissonant symphony. As Gian Gaston gasped his last breath on July 9th, 1737, the silence that followed the final tolling of other bells in the city was deafening. La Vaca, the broken bell, remained silent, its shattered voice a permanent testament to the end of an epoch. It never truly recovered its full, resonant sound, becoming a lingering symbol of a dynasty that, for better or worse, had shaped the world. The citizens of Florence, steeped in centuries of tradition and superstition, looked to the silent, broken bell and knew, with a certainty that transcended mere logic, that it had spoken the final word on the Medici. Number 2. The Omen of the Broken Lily for Giovanni de' Medici, Pope Leo X. Giovanni de' Medici was born into luxury, a son of Lorenzo the Magnificent, destined for greatness in the church. His path seemed blessed from the start, a golden road paved by his father's vast influence and wealth. But even for a man so seemingly touched by fortune, whispers of destiny and forewarnings of tumultuous times sometimes manifested in the most unexpected ways. One such omen, perhaps less dramatic than a storm or a comet, but equally potent in its symbolism, surrounded a small, seemingly insignificant detail at the very moment of his election as Pope. It was March 1513, and the conclave of cardinals was locked in the Vatican, deliberating the successor to Pope Julius II. The air was thick with political maneuvering, ambition, and the heavy scent of incense. And Giovanni, despite his youth and somewhat jovial nature, was a formidable candidate, backed by the wealth of the Medici Bank and the shrewd diplomacy of his family. After days of intense negotiation, the white smoke finally curled from the Sistine Chapel, signaling that a new pope had been chosen. It was Giovanni de' Medici, who would take the name Leo X. As per tradition, the newly elected pope was led to the sedia stercoraria, a porphyry commode chair, often described as a dung chair or care of filth, used for symbolic ceremony. The exact origins of this ritual are debated, but it was often interpreted as a reminder to the pope that he was but mortal dust, despite his divine office. It also allowed for a physical examination to confirm the pope's masculinity, a bizarre tradition stemming from the legend of Pope Joan. On this particular day, as Giovanni sat upon the ancient chair, adorned in the papal vestments, something happened that caught the attention of those present. The papal tiara, a magnificent, jewel-encrusted crown, was being prepared for him. On it, traditionally, were embroidered the arms of the Medici family. The Medici crest prominently featured 6 pal, or balls, typically depicted in red, and sometimes, for the French branch, 1 blue ball adorned with 3 golden fleurs-de-lis, the lily symbol of France. This particular tiara had been newly crafted, or perhaps heavily redecorated for the occasion. As it was presented to Giovanni, a small yet significant detail was noticed by the master of ceremonies and other attendants. One of the intricately embroidered fleurs-de-lis, one of the 3 golden lilies on the blue ball, was found to be broken or detached. It was a tiny flaw on a grand symbol. But in an era where every detail, every sign, every subtle imperfection was scrutinized for deeper meaning, it was immediately interpreted as an omen. The lily, the symbol of France, was intertwined with the Medici's fortunes. France was a dominant power in Europe, and the Medici, through their banking and political machinations, had always maintained complex and vital relations with the French monarchy. A broken lily on the very symbol of the newly elected pope was not something to be easily dismissed. Historians and chroniclers of the time, keenly aware of the superstitious nature of the age, noted this event. Francesco Guicciardini, a prominent Florentine historian and contemporary of Leo X, while not explicitly detailing this specific omen, often wrote of the prevalent belief in signs and portents during significant events. The specific story of the broken lily was transmitted through various Vatican sources and memoirs of the period, whispered among the curia. The master of ceremonies, usually meticulously organized, was reportedly flustered by the oversight, but the damage was done. What could a broken lily signify? To many, it hinted at a fracture in the relationship between the papacy and France, or perhaps internal strife within the French monarchy itself, which would inevitably draw in the Pope. It could also foreshadow a disruption of peace, a breaking of alliances, or a weakening of the established order. Leo X's papacy, though marked by lavish patronage of the arts and an explosion of cultural brilliance, was also a period of immense political upheaval. He faced constant pressure from the major European powers, including France, Spain, and the Holy Roman Empire, each vying for influence over Italy and the Papal States. Indeed, Leo X's pontificate became embroiled in the Italian Wars, a series of conflicts that saw alliances constantly shift and break. He initially sided with France against Spain, then switched his allegiance, aligning with Emperor Charles V against France. These diplomatic maneuvers were fraught with danger and often led to costly military campaigns and political instability. The very balance of power in Europe seemed to be in constant flux, a broken equilibrium, much like the broken lily on his papal tiara. Moreover, the Reformation, a seismic schism that would shatter the unity of Western Christendom, began under his watch. Martin Luther's 95 Theses, nailed to the church door in Wittenberg in 1517, challenged the very authority of the Pope and the established church. This religious upheaval was arguably the most profound breaking of its time, a fracturing of the very fabric of European society that reverberated for centuries. Could a broken lily have been a subtle yet profound premonition of such monumental divisions? The contemporary accounts do not explicitly state this broken lily meant the Reformation, but they underscore the belief that such anomalies were warnings. The broken lily on Leo X's tiara remained an unsettling anecdote whispered among those who believed that no detail, however small, was accidental when great events were unfolding. It served as a reminder that even the most powerful men, destined for the highest office, were subject to the mysterious dictates of fate, heralded by signs that only the observant could interpret. Number 3. Catherine de' Medici in Nostradamus' ominous meeting. The name Nostradamus conjures images of ancient prophecies, cryptic verses, and foretellings of monumental events. It is a name forever intertwined with one of the most powerful and intriguing women of the Renaissance, Catherine de' Medici, Queen of France. This was not just a casual encounter. It was a calculated act by a queen, desperate for insight into a future shrouded in uncertainty and danger. The story of their meeting, and the ominous visions Nostradamus allegedly shared with Catherine, became one of the most enduring legends surrounding the Medici. Catherine de' Medici, born into the powerful Florentine family, married into the French royal family at a young age. Her early years in France were difficult, marked by her husband Henri II's open affair with Diane de Poitiers and her own struggle to produce an heir. But eventually she bore 10 children, and after her husband's sudden death in a jousting accident, she rose to become one of the most influential and formidable regents and queens in French history. She was a woman of immense intellect, political acumen, and a deep interest in the occult, particularly astrology and prophecy. It was in 1555 that Nostradamus published his monumental work, Les Prophecies, a collection of quatrains written in obscure symbolic language. These verses, interpreted by many as predictions of future events, quickly gained notoriety. Catherine, ever pragmatic yet deeply superstitious, heard of the physician astrologer's growing fame. The political landscape of France was treacherous. Religious wars between Catholics and Huguenots were simmering. Her sons were young and often sickly, and the Valois dynasty, into which she had married, felt vulnerable. She needed reassurance, or perhaps a warning. In 1556, Catherine summoned Nostradamus to her court at the Château de Chenonceau. He arrived, a man with a reputation for both great insight and unsettling pronouncements. Their meeting was cloaked in secrecy, a private consultation between the Queen and a seer. The common historical accounts, corroborated by various contemporary memoirs and later biographical works, detail the intensity of their interaction. This Nostradamus, using his astrological charts and perhaps other divinatory methods, was asked to cast the horoscopes of Catherine and her children. It was during this session that Nostradamus delivered a series of visions that would haunt Catherine for the rest of her life. He allegedly showed her, in a scrying mirror or through vivid descriptions, the future of her sons. He foresaw them becoming kings one after another, but each reign would be tragically short. He saw them die without legitimate heirs, plunging France into further instability. It was a terrifying parade of premature deaths and unfulfilled destinies, a stark contrast to Catherine's hopes for a stable, long-lasting Valois dynasty. The most chilling aspect of the prophecy concerned her third son, Henri III. Nostradamus supposedly showed her a vision of Henri as a king, but with a crown that seemed to fall off his head, and then another crown equally precarious. He indicated that Henri would be the last of her sons to rule, and his reign would end in tragedy, leaving France in turmoil. He also hinted at the number of years each would reign, a detail Catherine reportedly obsessed over for decades. Contemporary chronicles, like those by Pierre de l'Estoile, a chronicler who closely observed the court during these tumultuous times, often refer to the immense influence of Nostradamus on Catherine. While the exact words of their private consultation are not recorded verbatim, the general gist of Nostradamus's dark predictions regarding her son's fates became part of the court's lore. The Florentine ambassador to France, Giovanni Michiel, also frequently reported on Catherine's preoccupation with astrology and her reliance on various prognosticators, including Nostradamus. Catherine, it is said, took these prophecies to heart, though she tried desperately to defy them. Her reign as Queen Mother was characterized by constant political maneuvering, attempts to solidify the power of her sons, and desperate efforts to secure the future of the Valois dynasty. She tried to arrange advantageous marriages, quell religious unrest, and centralize power. But the ominous predictions seemed to follow her, a dark shadow over her ambitious plans. Her sons, one by one, ascended to the throne, just as Nostradamus had predicted. Francois II, her eldest, died after reigning for only 17 months. Charles IX followed, ruling for 14 years before succumbing to a mysterious illness at the age of 23. Finally, Henri III became king. His reign was indeed marked by intense religious wars and political assassinations. The crown falling off visions seemed to manifest in the constant challenges to his authority. Henri III, the last of Catherine's sons to rule, was assassinated in 1589, a mere 2 months before Catherine herself died. He died without a legitimate male heir, effectively ending the Valois line and plunging France into further civil war before the Bourbon dynasty took the throne. The chilling accuracy of Nostradamus' alleged visions deeply impacted Catherine. She lived through the successive deaths of her sons, each tragedy reinforcing the belief that the prophecies were unfolding before her eyes. Whether Nostradamus was truly a prophet or simply a shrewd observer of political trends, the story of his meeting with Catherine de Medici and the ominous future he painted for her family became a powerful testament to the belief in destiny and the supernatural, a belief that even the most powerful queen could not escape. Number 4, the storm and visions before Lorenzo, the Magnificent's death. The year was 1492, a year forever marked by distant voyages across unknown seas. But in Florence, the grand stage for the Medici, it was a year of profound loss, shadowed by an array of unsettling omens preceding the death of its most illustrious citizen, Lorenzo de' Medici, the Magnificent. He was not just a ruler, he was the embodiment of the Florentine Renaissance, a poet, a statesman, a patron of arts, and the glue that held the fragile piece of Italy together. His passing was not just an event, it was a cosmic shift, and the heavens seemed to foretell it in spectacular fashion. Lorenzo's health had been failing for some time. The chronic gout that plagued his family had taken a severe toll, and by early April, he was confined to his villa in Careggi, just outside the city walls. The atmosphere in Florence was already heavy, with anxiety. People knew that Lorenzo's genius for diplomacy and his sheer force of personality were the only things preventing outright war between the various Italian states. His impending death was seen as a catastrophe, a potential descent into chaos. As his final days approached, a series of extraordinary and unnerving events unfolded, widely reported by contemporary chroniclers and repeated in hushed tones across the city. The most dramatic of these was a fierce and sudden thunderstorm that struck Florence. This was no ordinary storm. It was described as having a malevolent fury, unleashing lightning bolts with unusual intensity. One bolt in particular was seen as deeply significant. It struck the dome of the Florentine cathedral, Santa Maria del Fiore, Brunelleschi's masterpiece, shattering parts of it and sending stones hurtling down. The cathedral, a symbol of Florentine pride and resilience, had stood for generations. For lightning to strike its dome, and for it to occur precisely when Lorenzo was dying, was interpreted by many as a clear sign from God. It was a divine announcement of the impending loss, a crack in the very spiritual foundation of the city. Giorgio Vasari, the renowned biographer of artists, in his Lives of the Most Excellent Painters, Sculptors, and Architects, mentions this striking event, underscoring its impact on the popular imagination. Francesco Guicciardini also touches upon the general mood of foreboding and the belief in divine signs surrounding Lorenzo's final days. But the storm was not the only omen. Accounts speak of a woman, a nun known for her prophetic visions, who claimed to have seen a fiery chariot descend from the sky and land on the roof of the church of Santa Reparata, which was adjacent to the cathedral. From this chariot, she reported, a voice declared, "The Lord is coming to strike down the strong." This vision, deeply disturbing, was widely circulated, adding to the sense of an impending, unavoidable catastrophe. The strong was undoubtedly interpreted as Lorenzo, the great unifier and protector of Florence. Then there were the strange sounds heard in the night. People reported hearing mournful cries and ghostly voices echoing from the cloisters of the Basilica of San Marco, a place intimately linked to the Medici through their patronage. These were not the sounds of humans, but something ethereal, a wailing lament that seemed to presage a great sorrow. Some even claimed to hear a spectral procession, unseen but heard, moving through the city, as if mourning the magnificent leader before he had even departed. Even within Lorenzo's own villa at Careggi, the atmosphere was charged with premonition. His personal physician, Pier Leone, who had unsuccessfully tried various remedies to save him, was so distraught that he allegedly threw himself down a well shortly after Lorenzo's death, driven to despair by his failure and perhaps the weight of the omens. The death of a hawk, a beloved hunting bird of Lorenzo's, at the very moment his health took a final, sharp decline, was also noted. For a man who cherished the hunt, the death of such a creature was seen as a personal and symbolic blow. The most potent and perhaps most controversial of the omens surrounding Lorenzo's death involved Girolamo Savonarola, the fiery Dominican friar who had long preached against the decadence of Florence and the perceived moral corruption of the Medici, visited Lorenzo on his deathbed. What transpired between them became legendary. Savonarola reportedly refused to grant Lorenzo absolution unless he agreed to 3 conditions: that he repent for his sins, restore unjustly acquired wealth, and, most controversially, restore Florence's liberty by abandoning his informal rule and returning the city to a pure republic. Lorenzo, it is said, agreed to the first 2, but balked at the third. Savonarola then left without granting absolution, a stark and chilling condemnation from a man widely believed to be a prophet. This exchange, though debated by historians in its precise details, was widely believed at the time. It reinforced the idea that Lorenzo's death was not just a natural event, but a divine judgment, a moment of reckoning foretold by storms and visions. Whether true or embellished, the story underscored the powerful religious fervor that was sweeping Florence and the belief that the heavens themselves were weighing in on the fate of its greatest citizen. Lorenzo de' Medici died on April 8th, 1492. His death plunged Florence into deep mourning and, as many had feared, into a period of intense political instability. The peace he had so meticulously maintained shattered soon after, leading to years of conflict and the eventual expulsion of the Medici from Florence. The storm, the visionary nun, the ghostly sounds, and Savonarola's pronouncements all coalesced into a powerful narrative for the Florentines. The death of their magnificent leader was not simply a human tragedy, but a cataclysmic event foretold by the very heavens, marking the end of an era and the beginning of a turbulent future. Number 5. The Comet, before Giuliano de' Medici's death Pazzi conspiracy. The year 1478 was marked by one of the most infamous and brutal conspiracies in Florentine history, the Pazzi conspiracy. It was an audacious attempt by a rival banking family, supported by Pope Sixtus IV, to overthrow the Medici and assassinate their two most powerful members, Lorenzo and Giuliano de' Medici. Such a momentous and violent event, steeped in betrayal and bloodshed, was naturally accompanied by portents and omens, whispers of destiny among a populace deeply attuned to the supernatural. One such omen, perhaps the most striking, was the appearance of a comet in the Florentine sky shortly before the conspiracy unfolded. Comets, in the Renaissance, were not merely celestial phenomena to be observed with scientific detachment. They were seen as harbingers, divine messengers, often foretelling disaster, war, or the death of great rulers. When a comet with a long, fiery tail streaked across the night sky above Florence in the months leading up to April 1478, it caused widespread alarm and dread. It was a spectacular sight, impossible to ignore, and its appearance ignited intense speculation about what ill fortune it might bring. The Florentine chroniclers and diarists of the time, including men like Luca Landucci, a humble apothecary whose detailed diary provides a vivid eyewitness account of daily life in Florence, meticulously recorded the comet's appearance. And Landucci noted the general apprehension it caused, a sense that something terrible was about to happen. He did not explicitly state that the comet foretold the Pazzi conspiracy, but the timing of its appearance followed so swiftly by the brutal events of April 26th left little doubt in the minds of the Florentines about its ominous significance. The comet was seen as a celestial warning, a beacon of doom sent from above. The Pazzi conspiracy itself was meticulously planned for months. The conspirators, led by Jacopo and Francesco de' Pazzi, and supported by figures like Francesco Salviati, the Archbishop of Pisa, aimed to assassinate Lorenzo and Giuliano simultaneously during Sunday Mass at the Florence Cathedral Santa Maria del Fiore. They believed that by eliminating the two brothers, they could seize control of the city, exploiting any ensuing chaos. On the morning of Sunday, April 26, 1478, as the city prepared for Mass, the air was thick with the usual Sunday bustle, but beneath it lay a current of unease, heightened by the recent celestial visitor. Within the Grand Cathedral, amidst the solemnity of the Mass, the attack was launched. Giuliano de' Medici, young, handsome, and beloved by the Florentine populace, was brutally stabbed multiple times by Bernardo Baroncelli and Francesco de' Pazzi. He died almost instantly, his blood staining the hallowed stones of the church. Lorenzo, however, though wounded in the neck by a priestly conspirator named Antonio Maffei, managed to fight off his attackers and escape into the sacristy, where he was defended by his friends. His survival was seen by many as nothing short of miraculous, a testament to his destiny, and perhaps a sign of divine protection. The conspiracy failed in its ultimate goal. The Pazzi plotters were swiftly captured, brutally executed, and their names forever disgraced. The outrage of the Florentine people was swift and terrible, cementing the Medici's power rather than diminishing it. In the aftermath of the conspiracy, the comet's appearance was retrospectively imbued with even greater significance. It was seen as the undeniable premonition of Giuliano's death and the violent upheaval that had rocked Florence. Niccolò Machiavelli, in his Florentine histories, while not directly linking the comet to the conspiracy, often explored the role of fortune and the often unforeseen nature of political events. The popular imagination, however, made the connection readily. The comet had shone its baleful light on the city, warning of the violence to come, and indeed, violence had followed. The Pazzi conspiracy was a watershed moment for the Medici. It solidified Lorenzo's rule, turning him from a powerful citizen into an almost undisputed prince. But it also left an indelible scar, the brutal memory of Giuliano's murder, and the constant awareness of the treacherous forces that sought their downfall. The comet, which had appeared and then faded from the sky, left behind a lingering psychological impact. It became a powerful symbol of the dangerous world the Medici navigated, a world where ambition and power were constantly stalked by betrayal and death, and where the heavens themselves seemed to participate in the drama. For centuries afterward, whenever a celestial anomaly appeared, the story of the comet and Giuliano's death would be whispered, a reminder of a powerful omen that had chillingly come true. Number 6, Cosimo, the Elder's prophetic dream of the dragon. The story of the Medici family's rise to power is one of shrewd business, political cunning, and an unshakable ambition. But beneath the layers of finance and diplomacy there were whispers of destiny, a belief that their ascent was not merely due to human effort but was somehow guided by unseen forces. For Cosimo de' Medici, known as Cosimo the Elder, or Pater Patriae, father of the country, the architect of the family's enduring power, this sense of destiny was reportedly cemented by a vivid and unsettling dream he had early in his life, a dream that would later be interpreted as a powerful prophecy of his family's future. Cosimo, born in 1389, inherited a prosperous banking house from his father Giovanni de' Medici. But unlike his father, who preferred to operate discreetly, Cosimo was destined for a more prominent, albeit dangerous, role in Florentine politics. His rise was not smooth. He faced powerful enemies, particularly the Albizzi family, who saw his growing influence as a threat to their traditional aristocratic dominance. In 1433, these rivals successfully engineered his exile from Florence, a moment that could have shattered the Medici family forever. Yet, it was during this time of great uncertainty and adversity that the dream, a symbol of his preordained return, and the family's future glory gained deeper significance. The dream, widely recounted by early Medici biographers and chroniclers, including Niccolò Machiavelli in his Florentine histories, and later by Alessandro de' Medici's chaplain, was said to have occurred during Cosimo's youth or early adulthood. In this dream, Cosimo found himself in a vast, dark, and seemingly endless desert. The landscape was desolate, devoid of life, a place of desolation and despair. He felt lost, small, and overwhelmed by the vastness of the emptiness around him. Suddenly, a creature emerged from the shifting sands. It was a colossal serpent, or more often described as a dragon, with scales that glinted like precious stones and eyes that burned with an intense ancient fire. The creature was terrifying in its appearance, a being of immense power and primal force. Yet instead of attacking him, the dragon began to coil itself around him, slowly, deliberately. As it wrapped around him, Cosimo did not feel pain or fear of constriction. Instead, he felt an extraordinary sensation. The dragon seemed to lift him, raising him higher and higher above the barren desert floor. As he ascended, clinging to the mighty coils of the dragon, the desert below began to transform. The barren sands slowly gave way to lush, green fields, fertile valleys, and eventually a magnificent city. It was Florence, but more glorious, more prosperous, and more vibrant than he had ever known it. The dragon continued to lift him until he was hovering high above the city, looking down upon it as if from a throne. He saw his family, his descendants, flourishing within its walls, their names and their influence spreading far and wide. The dream concluded with this powerful vision of dominance and prosperity, with him, and by extension his family, elevated by this formidable, almost mythical creature. When Cosimo recounted this dream, it was initially seen as a curious personal experience. But after his dramatic return from exile in 1434, barely a year after he was cast out, the dream took on a profound new meaning. His return was triumphant, orchestrated by his allies, and the vast popular support he commanded. The Albizzi family, his persecutors, were in turn exiled. Cosimo, despite never holding an official title of monarch, effectively became the ruler of Florence, guiding its affairs with an iron fist clad in a velvet glove of patronage and benevolence. The dragon, in the context of the dream's interpretation, came to symbolize the very challenges and dangers Cosimo faced, the very forces that might have destroyed him. But instead of succumbing, he was able to harness these forces, to rise above them, and indeed to use them to elevate himself and his family. The barren desert represented his exile and the period of adversity, while the transformation to a flourishing city symbolized his successful return and the subsequent flourishing of Florence under Medici influence. The elevation above the city clearly foreshadowed his political dominance and the enduring power of his lineage. Machiavelli, a keen observer of power and history, while perhaps not endorsing the supernatural aspects, recognized the compelling narrative of such stories in shaping public perception. He chronicled Cosimo's shrewdness and resilience, which certainly fit the outcome of the dream. Later Medici family chroniclers, keen to legitimize their rule, embraced this prophetic dream as proof of their divine mandate. They saw it as a sign that the Medici were not just ambitious men, but chosen instruments of destiny, preordained to lead Florence to an era of unparalleled wealth and cultural glory. Cosimo the Elder's reign was indeed one of immense prosperity and artistic flourishing for Florence. He rebuilt churches, founded libraries, and patronized countless artists, solidifying the family's reputation as patrons of the Renaissance. His descendants, including Lorenzo the Magnificent, and later generations who became dukes and grand dukes, continued to wield immense power for centuries. The dream of the dragon became a foundational myth for the Medici, a powerful omen that affirmed their belief in their own unique destiny. It was a story told and retold, a whisper that reinforced the idea that the Medici were not just powerful, they were preordained, their very ascent foretold by a vivid, ancient vision that elevated them above the mundane and into the realm of legend.